Hi, welcome back to Gospel Chats. I'm Marshall, and this is Ryan, and we're so glad that you're joining us. Thank you for joining us for the first time or coming back again. We love having you here. Ryan, I'm just going to throw it right over to you. Our topic for today, we're going to talk about blind obedience, blind faith. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, good, because I'd forgotten that.
I know. That's funny that you did, because we agreed on this a week ago.
I know, but that's a long time.
I know. A week is a long time. You got things on your mind.
Very much.
Yeah. I want to get your thoughts and just engage in this wrestle with those two terms, right? They're kind of interchangeable in some ways, blind faith, blind obedience. And as I've been thinking about it, I think they get used primarily in a couple different scenarios that are interesting. So one, I think for maybe just someone who does not believe in God, someone who's atheist or, I think it's a catch-all term for saying, well, those of you that believe, it's kind of a crutch. You're avoiding rational thought, or you have not done the homework, or you don't have any evidence. You're just relying on blind faith, right? So I think that's the most common kind of way that gets used, for those who don't have any faith, as a negative term for those who do have faith. But I think this one's also interesting. I've been hearing it used more and more within the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Me too.
From member to member.
Yes.
Right. And so now it's not a blind faith as far as general faith in God. It's almost more with following prophets.
Yes.
Right. And so I think that's an interesting thought to kind of wrestle with that. So I want to talk about both of them. Both blind faith is an accusation from a non-believer to a believer, just in God or in religious things, but also within the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, that using that term blind faith or blind obedience for someone who is following the prophet in a way maybe different than them, or believes a little bit different than them, or is more accepting of certain things more than them.
From Salt Lake.
Yes. So, initial thoughts. What are you thinking?
I'm 100% on board with where you're seeing it coming from. I've seen it come from both locations, and I am seeing it happen quite a bit within the church. And where I'm coming from right away is I will lay my cards on the table, as it were. I hate the term, and I think it's incredibly inaccurate and dismissive of reality. And I think it's incredibly rude, and I think 100% should be abolished from our language as Latter-day Saints. So there we go.
There we go. No, how do you really feel about it, though, Marshall?
Well, I actually held back, Ryan.
Okay, there you go. Don't ever hold back. That's the best part of the podcast, is when you don't hold back. No, that I appreciate you saying that so clearly. And again, this is so sad.
Yeah.
Because again, out of all the people who shouldn't use that term as a weapon or as a derogatory term, would be just any person of faith, to realize, like, I hate it when I get accused of my faith being blind or my obedience being blind, and yet to now take that same term and use it against someone else in the household of faith.
Right. And to cut down somebody who is trying their best to follow the Lord. It hurts. It's difficult enough to keep the commandments, to follow the Lord, to follow the prophet, without having stones thrown from within the house.
Right. Okay. I want to go to Alma 30 and talk about Korihor. I think we've mentioned good old Korihor a couple times.
We've visited with him a couple times.
We've danced around with Korihor a little bit. But it's just so interesting to see patterns that don't die. I think Korihor was the Book of Mormon poster child for blind faith.
Yeah.
He doesn't use that term per se, specifically those words, but he uses the very theme. Right? So picking up Alma 30, verse 13, O ye that are bound down under a foolish and vain hope, why do you yoke yourselves with such foolish things? Why do you look to Christ? Why do you look for a Christ? For no man can know of anything which is to come. Behold, these things which ye say are handed down by holy prophets. Behold, they are foolish traditions of your fathers. How do you know of their surety? Behold, you cannot know of things which ye do not see. Yeah. It's the argument that is still used today against those that claim belief in God or in Jesus Christ or in prophets. that's not rational. That's something that you believe because your parents, you came from it's cultural. It's your naivety. You just don't know any better, and you refuse to open up the possibility of reality. That if you just open up your eyes and see the scientific proof in front of you, then you would know better. But you just have this childish, naive belief in the traditions of your fathers.
Right. And it's funny you should say that, because even just recently, one of our TikTok videos I posted about my experience with the stake president going on a mission and how I felt changed and new. And the only comment on there was from somebody saying, you didn't feel anything. Nothing really happened. You had a Pavlovian response, and the stake president knew how to ring the bell.
That's one way to look at that experience,
right? Exactly, and it was very clear of your experiences are nonsense and don't count, and therefore I will now dismiss everything you have to say.
Yeah, and the surety with which Korihor says this,
yes.
You can't know things. I can. I mean, that's so implied there.
Yes.
You know that it's so sad to say you can't know, but I can know that you don't know.
Right, and I find it fascinating that he relies almost wholly on sight, this being that you cannot see, and dismisses any other sensation that might lead to knowledge, which. I mean, we do have 5 senses, right? If we're going to even talk physical senses, and yet he reduces our senses down to 1.
Which would be irrational.
Completely
Isn't that irrational to just put all eggs in the basket of seeing with your eyes?
I know. Like I personally, so I don't believe in germs or atoms anymore. Just kidding. I really do. Don't cut that out of context. So,
okay. So this is what I love about the story so much. And I've loved it for a long time, but just I love it more now than ever. Because I think sometimes as a believer, it's easy to get on your heels.
Yes.
It's easy to get on your heels because all of a sudden, you know, especially, and I think about our young adults and how they might be on their heels a little bit too, to live in a world that wants to make them feel so stupid and so naive and question everything because, just because your parents taught. As if that has to be a bad thing. How dare you believe what loving parents taught you that has changed and shaped their lives, you idiot.
Or how dare you believe somebody who has 20, 30, 40 extra years of experience than you in life.
And has your best interest in mind, right? So, but it's easier that doesn't sound that way when it comes across from someone who is using the blind faith term. And so it's easy to be on your heels. And what I love so much about Alma 30 is Alma gets on his tiptoes, not on his heels, right? He does not, he's not defensive. He is offensive.
Yes.
Right? Which I think a believer really has the right to be offensive, not defensive in this argument of faith.
Absolutely, because we are coming from a place of experience and knowledge. And so there's no reason we should have to rely on their terms and their definitions in describing what we know and what we feel.
I think that's so important, right? That we get to bring other things to the conversation. We don't have to let other people set the rules.
Yes.
For a conversation about what's real and what I have or have not experienced.
Exactly.
And so Alma doesn't. He's not going to play Korihor's game as this whole, okay, just because I haven't seen certain things, you think that I can't know something, I can't believe something. And so if you jump over to starting in 40, and now what? And I love the word here because it comes up in scriptures. And again, someone who accuses a believer of blindly believing or being blindly obedient. I love that Alma uses the word. And now, what evidence have ye, Korihor, that there is no God, or that Christ cometh not? That's a good question.
It is a wonderful question.
It's a question I don't think we ask enough of. Where's your evidence that he's real? Where's your evidence that have you seen him? Where's your evidence that he's not?
Yeah.
I think that's almost a harder question.
It is. And they'll argue back that it's impossible to prove a negative and things of that nature, except for the simple answer is asking that question is putting it, okay, you want to talk evidence? Let's talk evidence. I have, and of course, Alma's going to go forward.
Go on for evidence.
I have evidence. You don't, but I do.
So think about that. Like again, I have felt on my heels sometimes as a believer that, how do I defend this? Because I can't prove it. I can't prove my spiritual experiences to somebody. But it's not about proving it. There's enough evidence that there's rationale behind why I believe what I believe.
Yes.
There's a lot of rationale. So he goes on and says, I say unto you that ye have none, save it be your word only. But behold, I have all things as a testimony or as evidence that these things are true. And ye also have all these things as a testimony unto you that they are true. Will ye deny them? Believest thou that these things are true? And then Alma goes on and tells him, he gives him his answer. I'm like, I know that you believe, but you're possessed, that you're lying. And then he goes on, and we get these great verses down in 44. All things denote there is a God, yea, even the earth, all things that are upon the face of it, yea, its motion, the planets which move in their regular form do witness that there's a supreme creator. He goes to prophets, he goes to scripture, he goes to his own experience.
Yes.
I just think that is so powerful. And again, not trying to prove someone else wrong, but being secure in your own faith enough to say, you and I do not have to be victims or pawns where other people get to set the terms for the conversation and to make you feel like you're an idiot or that you're immature or that you're lesser than because you have faith.
Yes.
I think it's just the opposite. No, I choose to have faith based on this evidence.
Yes.
Prophets, scriptures, my own personal experiences, other people in my life, and I've seen the effect that faith has had on them. I mean, you just go down the list, and there's a lot of evidence for faith.
Absolutely, and I love that. And honestly, in my own experience, if someone comes to me and we go through this, and they want to have a legitimate conversation, and they say, okay, I've looked at this, and this, and I just don't see it that way, I'm okay with that.
Yes, that's a different conversation.
That's a very different conversation to say, this is not how I'm experiencing this, but I respect how you're experiencing this. And that's a very different conversation versus your experience does not matter.
Yes.
Your experience does not count.
I just discount yours because it doesn't involve that one sense of sight.
Of sight, exactly. Or even if it does involve the sense of sight, I don't believe what you're telling me.
Yes, I think you're seeing it wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
I started to think about it, and it's interesting, and I'm slow on making connections, but seeing Alma 30 lined up right next to Alma 32.
Yes.
So Alma's had this Korihor experience, and now he's with the Zoramites trying to help them develop faith, and then I think the whole seed analogy, right? Faith is taking the word of Christ, and planting it in your heart, and seeing if there's evidence.
Yes, and it's a very, if we're going to be a very scientific method chapter.
Very much about evidence-based.
Evidence-based, experimenting, practical things. Are you doing this? Are you watering the seed? Are you taking care of it? Are you paying attention to it? Is it growing? Are you feeling different? Are you changing? And I think one of the things I've heard my mother say quite often was the gospel is true, and I know it because the gospel works. And I think that's a legit.
It grows, it sprouts, it's
grows.
Done what it was supposed to do.
And you see the change it has in people's lives. There is literal evidence right in front of you of them starting to live the gospel of Jesus Christ, and you see them change.
Agreed. And I just thought about what is it that initiates someone to even want to plant that seed is because you can, with your eyes, with your physical eyes, you can observe evidence of other people's trees.
Absolutely.
That's what did it for me. I saw other people had faith trees in their lives. I saw the goodness, I saw the fruits in their lives, and I thought, wow, I would like those fruits. I would like that happiness, that confidence, that peace, that joy, like whatever name it was, I wanted some of it. And so I thought the experiment is worth it to me. I would like to engage in an experiment. I will try to plant that belief. I'll try to exercise faith in things that I can't fully see. But based on what I do see, I want to try the experiment, and it turned into a tree in my own life. And so I just think I have so much evidence that my faith is anything but blind.
Yeah.
It's what I saw at the start, and it's what I've seen as I go along the way, and I see more and more. I just don't think that's blind faith.
I don't think it's blind faith at all because, as you said, there's so much that you do see, and I think that's one of the powerful uses of that tool of Satan, which is labeling it blind, is putting us on our heels, and it's designed to make us forget what we actually do see and do know, because the reality is we see an awful lot. And we have experienced an awful lot, all of us who have had any interaction with scriptures, with Christ, with the gospel of Jesus Christ. We have things that we have seen, that we know, and if we're going to be honest about that are very, very real and tangible things. And so by changing the terms, and it makes it so it's more difficult to deal with. But if we, as you said, pull an Alma and be like, no, you're wrong, you're lying, I have seen, you just refuse to listen to what I've seen.
Yeah. I just love that word evidence because it comes up again in Hebrews 11, right? As Paul's even defining what faith is.
The evidences of
the evidence of those things that are not seen, right?
Yep.
But it's these assurances. You get these evidences. I love that God created a plan where it might not always produce the evidences that the natural man wants.
Yep.
But God is so good and kind saying, but I will produce evidence. Like, I don't want you to blindly, to naively, to ignorantly follow me. Now, it does involve trust. And the idea of faith itself, I guess in some ways, the idea of faith does invite, not the word blind, but it invites an idea of not seeing everything. Right?
Yeah.
I think that's what makes it faith, is that you act on what you do see without having to see everything.
Absolutely.
That's what makes it faith.
That's what makes it faith. And if I may, that's one of the reasons that I'm a crabby person, is that every single human, no matter what you choose to believe and what you choose to follow, you'll be acting on things that you don't see, that you don't know. And I jokingly talking about atoms and germs, every single one of us washes our hands, I hope, without seeing germs. And we don't know. We are literally trusting a microscope slide that someone showed us at some point in time, something but somebody said about washing hands. We do it. We don't see it. I don't see the germs on my hands when I wash them. I don't see them go away after I wash my hands. I don't have time to go and do a quick little scan of my hands. But we do it. We act in faith all the time.
All the time.
All the time.
All the time. Jump in, Keely.
I think another big part of blind obedience is that people think that, like, we can't ask questions. And I think that that's something that's being changed in church culture right now, especially with one of President Holland's talk where he was like, ask questions, but make sure to hold the ground you've already won.
Yeah.
Hold on to your faith. And I think that that's also tricky, though, because what if you ask questions and you don't get the answers? Then you have to, in a way, blindly obey, but it's also just having faith. And so I think that's part of the question is when do we keep asking questions, and when do we have to say it's okay to just be okay with what you have?
With what you have. That's good.
That's really good.
Because that almost leads us more into this conversation of, like, within the church now, as we've started to use that phrase, blind obedience, blind faith, against each other at times. I think it does center around asking those hard questions. Thoughts with us using that against each other in the church a little bit?
I love that bringing forward, because I think it's super important, and I 100% in favor of question asking. I'm 100% in favor of it, as you pointed out with Elder Holland, this idea of but holding on to what you know. If I'm going to ask a question about something President Nelson's going to ask me to do, and by asking that question, throw out all of the experiences I've had that have made me know and believe with all my heart that he is a prophet of God, then I'm asking questions the wrong way. It's a very different thing to get instruction from someone that you, through your experience and through your knowledge and through your sight that you've seen, as someone who is a trusted source, and say, I'm going to work with this, even though I'm not sure what's going on. I'm still seeing a lot. And that's one of the reasons I don't like the term blind obedience, is because I'm not following President Nelson because I'm like, I'm too busy to even think for myself. I'm just going to cover my eyes and run. No, I'm trusting President Nelson because of what I've seen and because of what I've experienced with him and what I know about him. And so when he's like, hey, you should probably try this, I'm like, oh, that's a really good idea, Mr. Smarter than me and with a better sense of revelation than I am.
Holding a mantle as the prophet of God on earth.
Right? I trust experts all the time.
Yeah.
And so why shouldn't I trust someone who has, well, frankly, not let me down?
Yeah. Yeah, so much of it is, again, it's not blind obedience and not blind faith and it can be. Yeah. I mean, let's just be honest in the conversation. I think, and again, I wouldn't use those terms because I think that's pretty judgmental, but I think all of us do need to be careful of it. We need to think. We need to not just be robots. Yeah. We need to, it is healthy and good to have inspired questions.
Absolutely.
Right, that leads to more revelation. It leads to better decisions. Right, so again, that there is something out there that we could go too far to not ever have questions, to just become robots. But I don't think that's usually what's happening when people are being accused in the church of blind obedience and blind faith. It's they're acting in trust. They might not have all the answers, but they believe that a prophet invited them to do it. They might not have all the answers, but they believe the scriptures. They believe in personal revelation. They're acting on what they have seen and holding on to that, and that guides them moving into territory where they might not see everything.
Yeah.
This just makes me think on the mission, the order of the lessons. And I was always like, why are we starting with the restoration? Like, this is a hard one because people don't like the Book of Mormon. They don't like Joseph Smith. But the more I thought about it, I was like, if you don't have a testimony of the restoration, you can't have a testimony of anything else, because that's where it started. If you don't have a testimony of Joseph Smith, then you can't have a testimony of the Book of Mormon that he translated. And if you don't have a testimony of the Book of Mormon, then you can't believe anything that's in it. Yeah. And so I just think that we need those core beliefs and those core values. It makes me think of the In-N-Out movie, like the second one. Did you guys see the In-N-Out 2?
I did.
Inside Out?
When she's a teenager.
Yeah, sorry. Inside Out.
I'm just thinking hamburgers right here.
Yeah.
So.
The In-N-Out movie, Marshall's over here getting hungry going, yes,
sorry,
please.
I think I'm a little hungry.
Inside Out.
Inside Out.
Okay,
yeah. Inside Out 2. And they like put the memories down in the river, and it makes the core beliefs. Yeah. Like, we have to have those core beliefs to be able to have that blind obedience, because we have the knowledge and the faith and the truth in those main things. Like you were saying with President Nelson, I have faith in prophets in general. So yes, I'm going to follow our current prophet, President Nelson.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I love the idea of the core beliefs being so key. And I think that's where the conversation, I think, should always go. If I'm accused of being blindly obedient or blindly following somebody in church, my answer is always like, I am not. I'm not being blind at all, because I have seen. And to say that so that there's things that I've seen, there's things that I know that are core parts of who I am through my own experience that are guiding my choice to continue following.
Which changes the way that I approach difficult things.
Yes.
It's not that I'm not thinking through difficult situations. It's not that I am trying to be closed-minded or ignorant or whatever. I think we need to be very careful that we might miss that. If the minute we choose to label someone as blindly obedient or having blind faith, usually all we're saying is, I don't like that you disagree with me.
Yep.
I think you should side with me because it would make me feel better if you sided with me on this issue.
Exactly.
Right? As opposed to, I believe that you are a thoughtful, faithful person, and so you're probably approaching this thing with faith. We might see it a little differently on what we choose to do with it. But again, I'm okay with that. If someone can respectfully say, now, I know that you're doing your due diligence, you came to a different conclusion, I can totally respect that, as opposed to just saying that you're an idiot, because if you really did think about it, there's no way that you could land on that side of the table.
Exactly. There's a very big difference between saying, I'm struggling with this, that's coming from the Lord or coming from President Nelson, or which is the same. But I'm struggling with this and I'm trying to work through this. There's a very big difference between that and discounting everyone who didn't struggle with it in that same way.
Yes.
Who and once again, going back to that idea of what do they know and who do they know and what do they have faith in? I'm thinking Doctrine and Covenants section 21 and the command of the church to accept all of the words from his mouth as if from me in all patience and faith. And there are people that I know and love who struggle a lot more with accepting all words coming from the prophet's mouth with all patience and faith. And there are people who I know who have such a strong testimony of prophets that they don't struggle with that at all. And they just pick it up and they run with it. But neither of them they're not acting blindly there. It's they are using their own wealth of experience and life of experience and experience. I keep saying experiences, but there are things that they know to run with that. And there is nothing blind about it at all. They're doing it not because of what they don't see. They're doing it because of what they do see. And that's a very big difference. And it's a very unfair thing to accuse someone of not seeing just because they choose differently than you.
you see almost these two gifts again that don't have to be in opposition to each other. They should be used as companions, but almost the Lord will tell us in our mind and in our heart.
Yes.
And so you get some people that really do have the gift of, they have these minds to where they don't take easy answers, and they do need to be very thoughtful, and they need to analyze things, and they need to know, and to not look at that as a bad thing. That's a gift.
It is a gift.
That is a beautiful gift. And then there's this other gift over there, the heart, to kind of summarize the gift. But I think some people are very just naturally believing. And again, you could almost see those two camps, the head people looking at the heart people, and they're like, use your brain. And the heart people looking at the head people saying, where's your heart?
Yeah.
Where's your faith? And I can imagine God up there looking at both and saying, I gave you both.
Yeah.
Like why are you fighting? Use both gifts together.
Yeah.
And don't claim that one is better than the other. And so if some people question more, again, I think we've been bad maybe labeling them as like, oh, doubters. Like,
No.
that doesn't help anybody. That's not true. Some people just have brains that they need to really work through things more rationally, more logically. That can be a gift. Now, it can get dangerous if it's by itself. But then don't accuse someone who is just much more naturally inclined to believe and follow without maybe having to go through some of the other steps. That's also a gift too. That's not a bad thing.
No.
Right? I think you can find space for both.
Absolutely, and I think the Lord wants us to have both. I don't think He wants anyone who's just a heart or just a mind. It's interesting. C.S. Lewis gave a speech where he accused the educational establishment of creating men without chests, is what he called them, meaning men without hearts, to feel and to know. And one of the things he accused them of is by teaching just in your mind that you were taking away a key aspect of truth about those things, that there is a truth that it is beautiful, that's not, that there are true things that you feel, and feelings are true and feelings are real. And I think that's super important to remember as we look at this. God wants people with minds and with hearts working in conjunction, going together, asking questions, yes, but once again, going back to President Holling, asking questions on keeping what I do know in the equation.
Yes, bring those core beliefs to whatever the thing you're wrestling with.
And playing with scientific experimentation, right? Like that core belief that I know, so go back to the most core of core beliefs, that God is my Father, that He loves me, and that Jesus Christ is my Savior. Keeping those core beliefs, those are my control. That's my control area of all of my experiments that I'm dealing with in this life of choices I make. And I have to keep that as a control. If I get rid of those things, then I am acting blindly. Those are the things that I see. And one of the scriptures that I thought of as we came with this is Revelation 19:10, which I go to an awful lot, which is where John, falls down to worship the angel that's come to visit him. And he's like, no. We're a fellow servant of Jesus Christ here. And then he goes on and says, and all who have the spirit of the testimony of Jesus have the spirit of prophecy. And I love that moment because we use the word prophet so specifically in the church.
Capital P,
president of the church, versus a prophet is someone who has the testimony of Jesus. But, the world views the word prophet as someone who can tell the future. Well, testimony of Jesus means that you do know the future. You can see the future.
I know He's coming.
I know what my future is.
Yeah.
And my future is glorious and great. And that sight, that knowledge, that testimony of Jesus really is sight that allows me to act not blindly in any way, shape, or form, knowing that this is going to bring me closer to Him. This is going to help me follow Him to the path of what I see ahead of me, which is wonderful. Then if that's the case, put me on it.
I love that. Based on what I do see and what all the evidence that I have accumulated through my life, I have just learned to approach hard questions, hard topics with a tone of trust.
Yes.
That's the best I could have. I want to lead with trust. I want to assume good intent from God because of what I've seen from Him. He's good. He's been good. I want to assume good intent from prophets because everything I've seen is good intent, right? Doesn't mean it's all been perfect and without human error, but I want to lead with trust. I want to lead with the tone of trust, with an attitude of belief. I fear the day that I lead with skepticism, that I lead with distrust. I just don't think that's again, now different people have had different experiences, and I understand that some people have felt that they've been burned by some experiences, and so it's once you lose trust,
it's a hard thing.
Trust is a hard thing to get back.
Absolutely.
And so again, that's where I would have to go to those deeper levels of, have I had experiences with God? Can I trust God? Can I trust Jesus Christ? What are my what real experiences have I had that I can still trust and hold on to as I navigate my new trust issues?
Yeah. It was interesting. I was listening this morning to Elder Boom's talk from their most recent general conference. He talks about his father or his wife's father. I can't remember who's released as bishop based on false accusations.
Yeah,
and then his wife asking, like, hey, should we go back to church next week? And he says, of course it is. It's the church of Jesus Christ, not the church of men. We're going back. And that is that deep trust of, what does he see? He sees clearly men making mistakes. But what does he see more clearly? He sees Jesus Christ at the center and says, I will trust him. I will go forward because I know he wants me here. And therefore, not acting in blind faith, but acting in full knowledge of where he stands with the Lord.
I was looking at a talk from President Eyring's son, the other President Eyring, and he was talking about blind faith, and he said in those moments, for someone who really does have faith based on what the evidence they have received, it's not blind faith, it's big faith.
Yes.
And I like that. I thought that's really what it is. For those who have eyes to see, I do not follow blind. I have to exercise big faith sometimes when I don't get the answers when it is messy. That's not where I exercise now blind faith. It's where I exercise big faith. It's where I have to trust even more, which is a beautiful thing, because the more that I've exercised that trust, the greater evidence I've received in the long run. So I just like the idea of big faith over blind faith.
I love that distinction, and I think it's so key to say that. And faith requires us to leap sometimes without full sight. And once again, you never have full sight. I have faith, taking out of a religious arm, I have faith every single time I get on an airplane. People have explained the physics to me. They've explained the math. I don't understand it. I just know that it works. And I have faith that it works every single time. And that's
you're
faith
putting your life in the hands of that faith.
Of pilots and of engineers and of people who constructed the airplane, of physics, that hopefully physics doesn't break down this time. And that's an awful lot of faith that I do. I drive to work every day with explosions 3 feet in front of me that could kill me at any second. But I trust that the people who put it together know more than I do. So I turn the key and start a fire, and my car starts exploding, and I drive to work.
That's a fun way to look at all of our morning commute a little bit more. Little explosions. I hope not.
Danger is my middle name, but
always living on the edge, you and your Honda.
It's a Hyundai.
Oh yeah, Hyundai. No, it is cool to take a step back though and see that we all live lives of faith.
We do.
We live lives, and so to bring that into a religious context is not absurd. It's not naive. It's not immature. It's life.
It is,
and it's a beautiful life.
It is, and I love it because once again, I do see. I've seen it in the lives of people I love. I've seen it in other people's lives. In fact, once my daughter once said, looking at others, and she said she's like, the gospel works. Once again, the gospel works because I really don't want that life. And that sounds like a horrible thing to say, but you see the people who throw away the commandments and some of the things that they end up going through. If you look at the statistics, it's really clear. Like, there are plenty of things to see that's good.
There's a lot of evidence out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, 2 takeaways. Just in the bigger arena of faith in general, I really, as a believer, do not feel like I have to be defensive. I think I really did. Early on in my testimony, I felt a little defensive of like, oh, all these smart, rational people, and do I need to question more? And is it naive of me to just believe these things? And I love Alma's approach that I have all things that denote there's a God. There's a lot of evidence, and my faith is not blind. I have seen so many things, and the more I see, the more I believe. So that was one takeaway. The second takeaway within the church, I think we better be very careful with this idea of calling other people out with blind faith and blind obedience. Maybe they have some spiritual gifts that are different than yours. And if we could kind of see the bigger picture to say, no, the very fact that someone is leading with trust is the heart and essence of faith. Don't think that people aren't rationally wrestling with the same questions, but if they're leading with trust, maybe use that as an example, not as an accusation.
Yep, absolutely.
All right, so those are two things that just been on my mind as I thought about this blind faith thing. Anything else?
I love it. I would just add that we all lose when we start accusing people of blind faith rather than asking them where they're getting the faith to do what they're doing.
What is it that they see? That would be a better question.
And
what do
I
you
love
see?
it. I think was it President Bingham from the Relief Society? If it wasn't, I don't know where she talking about this made the comment where sometimes in her councils with the Quorum of the 12 or the First Presidency, they would come up with the different ideas. And rather than be skeptical or accuse them, she started asking the question of, could you please explain to me what you're seeing that I'm not? And I think that's such a beautiful question. Rather than looking at someone and say, oh, you're choosing this, you're blind. Instead saying, oh, you're choosing this, can you help me understand what you see?
What you see. That's good.
And that's where it's at, because I don't know anyone who truly has faith in Jesus Christ who makes choices out of blindness. They make choices because of what they see. Even if I may, we you can't talk about blind faith without mentioning Adam, for many, many days, right? Keeping the commandment without knowing. He didn't know the purpose of the commandment, but what he did know is he knew God. And so he was 100% fine doing it because of what he did know, and that was enough. He had evidence.
That to me is the heart and soul of my faith, at least. When I don't see everything as clearly as I want, I see my Father and I see my Savior.
Yep.
And I do know them. So I will obey as best I can. And I believe that more knowledge will come as I do.
Amen.
That's what I see.
Amen.
Thanks for the chat.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you for joining us, and hope to see you again on Gospel Chats.